Hi, welcome to GNGF Live, brought to you by the Legal Marketing Academy by GNGF. I'm Josh Schuler, trainer from the Legal Marketing Academy, and I'm here with Joe Brodar. We're doing a follow-up from a conversation we had in July regarding Google's core algorithm update. The two-part update also included some new reporting tools for website managers, and we wanted to spend some time talking about the page experience report and the terminology and troubleshooting that it can help you with. Joe, good to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too, Josh.
I appreciate you taking the time for this. Now, I know the link is below to our long form video. We spent a lot of time in July talking about the core algorithm update and what new ranking criteria Google was including in the core algorithm. A big part of that was what was referred to as page experience, and at a similar time, Google rolled out this new page experience reporting tool in the Search Console. So before I go to Joe, if you haven't set up your Search Console dashboard yet, I recommend that from Analytics, you select Console and sync your Search Console dashboard with your Analytics dashboard. That's going to be the shortcut to making sure that those two are both set up for your website and that they're, for want of a better term, speaking to one another, so that you can share information back and forth very easily. That said, Joe, the page experience report, which I'm also sharing right now, does have some fairly technical jargon, as does a lot of Search Console. Now, my position is, since this is part of Google's core algorithm update, meaning the fundamental criteria that Google uses for search rankings, that if we're taking the time to track our users, which is what we do in analytics, we should be tracking the type of experience those users are having. And Google seems to agree by making this a focal point of the core update from June and July.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit, if you don't mind, about the incorporation of this page experience and the metrics related to it.
Yeah, so the big highlighted metrics are security, speed, and mobile. Now, if you're running ads and you have in-page advertising, that's a whole nother section to this, but we won't cover that today. So the biggest one, security. So that's the easiest one to solve, and that's SSL. Then you've got site speed, which is very important. That's probably the one users are going to notice the most, but it is also incredibly difficult to solve for. And then the last one, mobile usability. This is not new. This is something that Google has been working on making a core part of search rankings for multiple years, several years now, but now it's been codified into a tool in Search Console that shows you exactly what issues you may be having with site speed.
Gotcha. So,
Or mobile.
yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. And I think it's important to know that this page experience report is all based on mobile crawling of your websites. This is not related to desktop experience. And so, again, I'm sharing our screen with our viewers. You can see an example of what your page experience report might look like right when you open it. In addition to these three separate sections for the core web vitals, the mobile usability, and your HTTPS, which, as Joe rightfully called, the security. Now, for many of you, you probably will see a screen that looks more like this. That says you don't have enough data yet, and that's okay. That has been the default since July when this tool was incorporated into console. Those that have higher monthly traffic numbers have a larger sample to pull from, and so as your traffic becomes, as you start to have more traffic historically, for the sampling to become statistically relevant is really what it boils down to. You'll start seeing this page experience report populate, and it may be that you see 1 out of 4 or 2 out of 4 or 3 out of 4 of these sections populate. So Joe, one of the things that I notice right away is that I seem to see some inconsistency in what it says is a good URL versus where I'm seeing errors. The screen we're looking at right now, obviously we're not going to show any client data here. However, it's showing that there are no errors, yet it tells me there's 0% good URLs. Why? This seems confusing on the face of it. Can you help clarify what this is? Again, we're going to assume that a lot of our viewers are taking a look at this report for the very first time. So let's just introduce them. And but this first piece of data, a lot of times is going to feel like a conflict if you've never seen it before, right?
Yeah, so like you said, this tool is still brand new, so they are still working some things out with it just from the tool itself and how it's viewed, but also the data side of it, that the internet is so big. As much processing power as Google has, the internet is orders of magnitude larger. And it takes them time to crawl through every single website and basically rate each URL on that website. So if you're seeing that you're not getting the result that you expect to see right away, and that it's showing you that you don't have any good URLs, it could very well be just because the crawler hasn't validated that your site meets these requirements. Not necessarily that your site doesn't meet the requirements, but just that it hasn't positively said that it does.
Essentially, you're waiting in line, right? So when we publish new content to a website, we know that it's going to take some period of time, undefined, before that shows up as an indexed page, even if we nail it 100% and do everything right from launch, right? This is similar delay. However, it's indexing the entirety of the web for the first time, right?
Yeah, so it's obviously, I mean, Google can draw somewhat on the indexing that it had already had prior to this rollout, but from all that it seems is that they're using new data to power this tool. They're not relying on their previous data, so they are starting as much as Google ever can from a clean slate.
Yeah, in fact, I think this bears mentioning without going too far down the particular rabbit hole, but I know that the core web vitals rely heavily on, I don't know if they pronounce it as Crux or CRUX, but that they're using a tool that is specifically Chrome user experience as far as a direct measurement for this particular metric. Does that change the approach to mobile optimization at all? Versus trying to make sure that we're running well on Safari to keep it in the most simple terms?
Yeah, absolutely, because Google is Google, and they control a lot of things, and they base their data on the things that they can control. Whether or not that is the most common core use. So in your instance of Safari versus Chrome on mobile, is obviously that's split. iPhone users are going to be on Safari. Google users are going to be, or Android users are going to be on Google Chrome. And you can get both on either platform, but that's almost negligible. So Google is going to use their first-party data versus relying on Apple to report things back. So while it is still important to optimize for platforms like Safari and all of these other things, with anymore they're getting further and further apart in terms of the features that they offer, the things, ad blockers that are built in, privacy features that are built in that affect all of these things. And just know that Google will use Google to determine what these things are.
No, well said. I get questions related to this from clients quite often, and the way I've taken to expressing it is that you always want to make sure that you're working on every device, every platform. You want to have the widest audience, and you want to have the best experience across platforms. However, the reality is we are playing on Google's field, right? So regardless of what offense we're running, what plays we're calling, Google decides where the lines are painted. So we got to stay inside the lines. I feel like that just bears mentioning.
Yes.
So let's break down the components inside the report a bit. I feel like we can just touch on the security here very quickly, because it really is kind of a binary type of situation with the security pass fail. Hopefully, we have our folks set up on the proper protocols, but just give us a little bit on if we're seeing issues here, what might that mean, and what might we do about it?
Yes, definitely. So this, like I said, this is the easiest one to solve. It's if you aren't familiar with SSL and HTTPS, that's at those first letters in a URL, http://www.yourwebsite.com. HTTP is the old way, HTTPS is the new way. And now Google is just coming right out and saying it, you need to have it. If you don't, then you're falling behind. And all it is just going to your web host or your service provider and looking at what options they have. These days, it's not even going to cost you anything for the most part, depending on your host. Most hosts these days have native integrations with Let's Encrypt SSL. And Let's Encrypt is something of a community project that grew into something bigger and basically allows you to get free SSL certificates for your website that are signed. They are recognized authorities. So it's a way for you to be compliant with this without having to invest any money.
Gotcha. And so with that said, I opened with it. It's really binary. There's not a troubleshooting issue here beyond if you don't have this set up, your certificate applied, and if you're not running on this protocol as your main domain, do it now, because it's
Right.
really the time to change was a while ago. So you need to kind of consider this a minimum viable portion of your web offering, right?
Right. And there's one thing that could possibly end up needing to be troubleshooted here, and it's something I noticed with our clients. If anybody's familiar with Cloudflare, it's basically sits in between your website and the person who's loading your website, and it is somewhat of a direction post, but they offer a lot of other services as well, and one of them is they will create an SSL certificate for your domain, and if you don't have one on your web server, then it will serve the Cloudflare certificate instead. And what I've noticed is that it's hit or miss whether Google recognizes that Cloudflare certificate as being a valid certificate. So you definitely just want to make sure that if your site is loading securely, but Google hasn't recognized that you have an actual certificate on your web server and it's not at one of the points in between.
Gotcha. No, that's a great point. So if you're using really a service like Cloudflare or any of their competitors, probably something to verify.
Yep.
Okay. So then let's talk about the core web vitals. This is the largest area, as you said, in terms of the breadth of what's being considered and measured. And really within the core web vitals, we've got three specific areas, or three specific metrics would be a more appropriate way to say it, right? So we've got the LCP, which stands for the largest contentful paint. We've got the FID, the first input delay, and we've got the CLS, the cumulative layout shift. Now, I do a lot of work in this space every single day, and even I have some difficulty, not just with troubleshooting these, but with identifying what exactly an error related to each might be trying to tell me. So let's talk about these individually. Let's start with the largest contentful paint. I think this is probably the most common issue. So let's start with that LCP issue. Joe, tell us what exactly that means and what it might be indicative of in more plain English, if you would.
Yeah, so the largest contentful paint is, it sounds technical, but if you break down what that's actually saying, it's pretty simple. It's just that what is the largest single block on your page that's being rendered in, that's being put in front of the user. And technically speaking, it could be anything. It could be a block of text, it could be an image, it could be a video. However, it will almost always be an image.
Right.
the images, particularly banner images and header images that are full screen, they may not be properly sized down for mobile, so it's trying to load a desktop-sized image onto a mobile device, and so it's basically saying that you're loading something that is too big, and it's slowing everything else down.
Yeah, so you're really creating a backlog, right? Right at the top of your page, if you don't have the image both sized correctly and formatted correctly as well, right?
Right.
You know, obviously we touch a lot of pages, a lot of clients, and a lot of new client sites, and so we have our best practices. But I know it's not uncommon at all. The two most common things I would say are, like you said, sized incorrectly, right? So we open up that image as an attachment. We save it on the desktop. We open it up there, and we go, let me adjust this size to take a look at what size it is. And, you know, if I look at it in inches instead of pixels, I might have like a 3-foot wide image, right, in high resolution, which really is not going to be an optimal experience for somebody on a mobile phone that's not on Wi-Fi at the moment. And that's really kind of like, not to confuse acronyms here, but the lowest common denominator, right, is what is this page going to be like from an experience standpoint if you're on a mobile device and you're not on Wi-Fi, right? Is it going to be fast? Is it going to slow you down? Is it going to be responsive? So on and so forth. So not to belabor the point, but that is the lion's share. And then, you know, I know that there are formats that are going to be much more likely to pass this test, or formats that are going to be much more likely to cause an issue. Can you highlight one or two of the former or the latter?
Yeah. So the most common image formats that you'll see, and you're probably familiar with, are JPEGs and PNGs. And while those are okay formats, they're not the worst image formats. They're not the best. They're bog standard. That's what everybody has. Now, if you want to be gold standard for images, you want to use WebP, which stands for web photograph. I'm pretty sure, or web picture. It's one of the two. But that is an image format that was specifically created to load well over the internet, to load well in a browser. And that is what they will recommend. If you use a page speed test tool, that's what they're going to tell you you should use, and they're absolutely right. It was, like I said, anything that's been specifically designed with speed in mind is going to be better.
Gotcha. And so the last thing is, if we've taken a look at our media, right, and we feel like, okay, we've got our page is set up to be responsive, we've got properly sized, and we're in the right file format. What are any other like non-photo issues to maybe be aware of? Like, hey, here's something to steer clear of.
So yes, so another LCP that you could run into would be a video. That's kind of a big one where you may not need to load that video in right away. If you just basically say load the thumbnail image for this video in right away, but don't actually load that video until somebody clicks to play it, that's an easy win. That's going to be, video files are huge. They just are. They're the biggest files out there. And anything you can do to reduce that is going to help.
Sure. So that's why you're the technical expert. I'm the one that gets to say, hey, what I'd like to do is make sure that a thumbnail is here and the video loads later, even though I don't have the capability to do that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's great, and thank you. So moving on from there, let's talk about the FID, the first input delay. Give us an idea, or give us a definition, and help us wrap our head around what's defining a first input delay.
Yeah, so that one, that's another one that, again, it sounds very technical, but if you really just look at what the words are, it makes a lot of sense. It's how long does somebody have to wait before they can actually interact with your page? Be that typing into a search bar, scrolling the page, clicking on a menu and looking through the options. It's basically how long does somebody have to wait before they can do something.
So, and I noticed, I pulled up another screen here just to have a quick reference point where this client It doesn't have any FID issues now, but it looks like they had one earlier in in middle of the month, last month to be specific. This is saying it right in the screen, 100 milliseconds mobile. Is that really a completely binary pass-fail number? I mean, obviously it's a very small number, so you're causing a delay or you're not at a certain point. But how hard and fast are the guidances that we're seeing here?
Yeah, so it's unlike something like security that is a yes or a no. All of these core web vital things are a little looser, we'll say. They exist on a spectrum. So it's not going to be something where you necessarily have like, yes, this page has input delay, or no, it doesn't. It's every page has input delay. It's just how much input delay. And Google has specified ranges laid out for each of the metrics they look at with Core Web Vitals. I'm not sure off the top of my head what FID's ranges are. Maybe somebody can throw that into chat for me. But they have, yeah, it's not a hard and fast. It's a rating scale.
Yeah, so it's very interesting with all of these. You can do direct scans of an individual page on your site, right? And you can do an individual scan. To your point, Joe, beneath we do have direct links for you guys that are to the page experience report FAQ that Google put out, and then we also have another link for the definitions and underlying data on each of these core web vitals that we're discussing. So you can click those links below and get direct information as well as tools to scan. So, Joe, when we talk about page speed, we've used the developer page speed tool for a long time, as opposed to having an internal tool like this one. But I could run that scan twice, back to back, within 10 seconds of one another, and get two very different reports, right?
Yes. Yeah, so that's kind of the biggest issue with these core web vitals and site speed, is that site speed depends on so many different things. Imagine if you had water flowing through a series of pipes. It's only going to move as fast as the thinnest pipe allows. And so if there's any hiccup in the long chain between your device and Google and the web server, it's going to slow that whole thing down. Like you kind of alluded to, like we have basically something that automatically tests these for us on a regular schedule, and we'll see that, one test to the next, be they a week apart, a day apart, or a minute apart, can jump or fall by as much as 20 to 30 points. It's something that I'm hoping as Google continues to roll this out and give you access in Search Console, they can help to kind of alleviate that volatile feel to it and kind of give you more of an average rating to it, because it is something that, while you can control a lot of things on your end with the web server, you can't control the networks in between, and you can't control the network of the person who's pulling up your site.
That's right. So we've got two more areas I want to touch on, but I know we are running a little tight on time. So the next thing I wanted to talk about under the core web vitals is the cumulative layout shift. And I'll be honest, even as a professional, I know to look out for troubleshooting or for error messages regarding this. It's something I have difficulty getting my head around in terms of what it's exactly identifying as issues and what the best practices are to try and prevent it. So, Joe, break it down and for our viewers and for me too, because I could always hear it again.
Yeah. This is one of the more difficult ones to understand, and I had to do a lot of research and reading things from different people to truly understand what it was getting at. But basically, it's a function of how much of your content is moving and how much of the screen view it's affecting. So again, that doesn't really mean anything until I put it to an example. So The most common one that I found is something like a live chat widget or a pop-up that covers up most of your screen. Live chat is good, and you should absolutely have it on your website, but you need to be aware of how it's implemented. And you don't want that pop-up to then cover 80% of your screen, because that's not good user experience. And remember that that's what this whole thing is focused on. Google's trying to improve a user's experience on your site. And so just think through, like, when you're reading an article on your phone in the news or something, and it pops up with that huge thing that says, want to subscribe to our newsletter. Like that's a layout shift. And that's something that Google has determined is not good user experience.
And rightfully so. My background in media, right? It was a lot related to ad operations and delivering things like sliders, like what we'd call an interstitial that stops you from actually viewing the content on page until you take some sort of action. And so I'm not surprised at all that Google is de-incentivizing anything like that. Reiterate, though, things like live chat in particular, great illustration, super good to have, right? Great for your user experience. I would argue that now, post-pandemic, folks have the expectation that they're going to be able to have a mechanism to contact you on or off hours, essentially 24 hours a day. So there might have to be a trade-off between serving the customer's needs or even their minimum expectations and passing this particular test, right?
Definitely, yeah. And that's I think going to be a common thread here with all of the core web vitals, is that, again, you want to just make sure that what you're providing is good user experience, and the rest will follow.
And then the last thing I want to touch on is I find it interesting nomenclature, but that Google includes this separate mobile usability underneath the page experience. So, and they've separated that out from the core web vitals, which, again, everything we've talked about, right, is specific to mobile experience, but this mobile usability is kind of cordoned off in its own section. Can you help us understand what we're seeing here?
Yeah. So this again is something that the mobile usability, mobile coverage section of Search Console has been here in one form or another for a while, but they have obviously now moved it in with the other page experience things. And this, again, should not come as a surprise to anybody. But mobile is what they care about. That's where all traffic is headed. It's growing so quickly that you have to be mobile friendly. And these are the things that Google is telling you are how you do that. So things like, just think about the bad experience you've had while reading on your phone. You try to click a button and you accidentally click something next to it. You want to make sure that things like buttons, links are easily tappable with a finger, and it's not going to accidentally click something else. The biggest one, probably besides that, is that first issue you're seeing on the screen there. The text is too small to read. You don't want people to have to be pinch zooming their phone just to read the basic text of your page. You want the page to work as it's loaded. You don't want people to have to interact for your page to be read. And then the last one, the content wider to screen, is one similar to that, but it's more technical in that it has to do with how your website is developed, and you want to make sure that when certain things like a banner image, that's probably the most common thing that goes wider than the screen. And why that happens is because the container for that image isn't properly defined. That's a one that you would be hard-pressed to solve yourself, but on a website theme, it should already be in place. And if you are paying somebody to develop a custom website, they should have already done this.
Got it. Yeah, that's essentially a styling issue that is trickling down from kind of your overall design of your site. So if you're seeing that, if it's an out-of-the-box site, you shouldn't see that And if you're working with a developer that's well within their purview, reach out and have them correct it. And to your point, these are the same messages that we would have seen within console previously under coverage if we were to look at just mobile pages, right? Within the developer page speed tool that I mentioned, they've just taken that data and that reporting and put it here in console. I do want to make sure our viewers are real clear on one thing is in the large majority of cases, if you see issues or if you see reports on your good URLs, either way, when you click for more detail, you can see individual pages, but Google's only going to provide a sample. So if you have one page with a particular issue, you probably will be able to see what page on your website that is. However, if you have a more mature website with a lot of content and you have 10 issues among 800 pages, you're probably not going to see all 10 specific URLs. You're probably going to see a sample of URLs that have an issue. And so it may be that you need to run some individual testing, or you may need to make some changes globally to things like styling that Joe just mentioned. Joe, appreciate it. Thank you for helping us navigate and understand the information on this new report. It's a lot of data. It can get pretty technical pretty fast, but to reiterate what I said at the top, I think if we're investing the time in tracking users and making sure that they convert, right, taking the action that we want, then we need to be paying attention to page experience. If you're running monthly reports from a marketing standpoint or on your web activity, really the health of your website within the page experience reports here should be part of your kind of core reporting that you're checking on a regular basis. So, Joe, thank you again.
Yeah, thanks for talking. It's always good.
All right. Thanks for joining us today at GNGF Live. Again, brought to you today by the Legal Marketing Academy by GNGF. And this is real. I just found out about a awesome promo we have for our GNGF Live viewers. Learn more about the Legal Marketing Academy at join.gngf.com. Again, that's join.gngf.com. And use promo code LIVE. You're going to get your first month membership at the Academy completely free. And that's a promotion that I just learned about while we were live here. So don't forget to like and subscribe. Make sure you catch notifications when we're going live next. And we'll see you next time at GNGF Live.
Hey, what's up? I'm Josh. Thanks so much for joining us. If you feel like you learned something today, think of how beneficial it would be to chat with myself or another one of our marketing consultants one-on-one. Go ahead and visit our website to schedule your free consultation. It only takes a minute.